Specialist at University of Arizona. Thanks for calling in. So the purpose of this webinar is to get all of you who have called in and hopefully who have a box actually up and running and just run through the web. We're hoping that people can go ahead and get a sim or two done in the next couple of weeks. The project team's goal at this point is to really learn from the community what works about the product, what doesn't work about the product, so we can actually rework it, improve it, and make it useful for the community before we actually distribute it out wide. So this is sort of the pilot test group. So today, we're just going to go through really quickly our current website, which is on the screen share. And if you don't see it, please throw a message up in the group chat. But right here is asapsim.com, the website we created to get all the information out there. And thanks to Mabel for creating this. This area is a little bit of information about the product itself. Sam Reen on our team also has this section right here, which is for some tweets, and we're hoping that folks will tweet hashtag ASAPSimBox with their experiences, with some pictures, and really get some information out to the community. So if you have, hopefully everyone on this call has a box. If you don't, go ahead and right here, sign up, and then Mark can get you one once we get the back order situated. So really, after you receive the box is the material that you're going to need. You're going to have probably a mannequin, lo-fi mannequin in a red tackle box, perhaps. This right here is the trainer video. It's only about 5 minutes and really walks you through all of the components of the box itself, including the debriefing guide, which has the pre-brief information, the simulation session information, and the debriefing guide, as well as what we're calling the peripheral brain cards. Those are all the cards with the pediatric specific information and the learning points that you can use during your debrief and also provide to your team members from the information that they can learn. Step 2 here is an example of a debrief being run. Again, Sam Reen's team put this together. I believe this is about 7 or 8 minutes, and it's actually on a fast forward. So it shows components of getting the team set up. It shows components of the pre-brief, actually doing the simulation, and some examples of how the debriefing goes. Right here, if you don't have your PDFs in hand or your booklets in hand, they're actually linked. So if you click here, you've got the SimBox PDF here with the table of contents and all those guides that I mentioned. And if you keep going, it's got everything broken out for you. And then this one, the peripheral brain booklet or cards, is also the information that we've put together for everyone here, sort of the goals of each one, the skills and the knowledge, and then a whole lot of information. Vital signs are an example, where you can get cardiac monitoring done, things you should think about for an altered mental status child or neonate, et cetera, et cetera. This is the Sim Monitor video that should be played during the drill, either on your phone, your tablet, or computer. We'd like to recommend tablet or computer just because it's a little bit bigger. This video was created to really emulate the case over 10 minutes. So there's the EMS call in there. There's some pause time for using it set up with their equipment. And then there's the vital signs that display based on the case itself. You can fast forward and back up on this video just to match what your participants are doing if you want to for the more advanced leaders here. And then really what we're interested in is how to improve the SimBox. So if you ran the sim and you're the facilitator, the educator, or the debriefer, we really want to get some information from you about how it went, what you found useful, what you didn't find useful, what could be improved, and whether or not you felt some of these items really got your team involved, finding the equipment in the emergency department, and really beefing up their knowledge. So this is the primary source for our team to get information from you with regards to how to improve it. You can always email us as well for that. And then here, if your participants are also willing to fill out a survey, this is the survey for the participants really as a member of the team and how it functions for them as a learning tool. Our team has about, let's go up here. So, So this is about how this project came to be. Our team is right here. And for those of you who are going to be embarking upon doing a sim over the next couple of weeks, our team is very willing to meet with you one-on-one, either by phone, by video conference, or even if you want to video us in onto your sim so we can help you do the debriefing or the pre-briefing and give you some help. We'd love to do that for you. So you can feel free to reach out to us specifically. Again, any feedback, you can email us. This goes to a centralized mailbox for us to look at. Or you can email Mark because his email address is all over this website right here. And also just specifically any contacts, any questions or feedback, please email Mark as the team lead. And that's our website. So if you lose your material or even want to give your participants material, it is all sitting right here for free use for you guys. So at this point, we wanted to answer questions from the group with regards to anything you've received so far, any questions you have if you've already run a sim, or any questions we can answer if you're planning on running a simulation. We did not receive any questions ahead of time. So at this point, I'll invite any of the project team members to make any comment, and then any of the participants to ask questions.
Thank you, Vivian. That was a great summary. So if there's any questions and you're not comfortable verbalizing them, please list them in the chat box. A couple of high-level things I want to highlight is this is a collaborative project development with you as the end users, and our goal is to have an off-the-shelf, easy-to-use, and frequently used pediatric simulation training exercise or event. So for things like I don't have a simulator or you forgot the simulator, you can potentially use a doll. For things like I don't have the booklets, you can get the debriefing script on here. You can get some of the cognitive training scripts on here as well in the debrief guide and the peripheral brain card. And that's why instead of needing a simulator software, you can really just click on this video and that will display the vital signs as well as what a patient looks like. This is version 0.0. We're hoping together with you we get to version 1.0 and can launch this more broadly nationally. But we do recognize this is a very narrow scope. This is really focused on the first 5 minutes and the objectives are pretty narrow. If we are successful, then we will aim to work together with you to expand the objectives to many other conditions and learning objectives. We've already had discussions about creating sim boxes for things like IO or vascular access, to creating sim boxes for pediatric specific conditions. So I did mute everyone because there was a little background noise. So if there's any questions or comments from a team member or from a participant, please unmute yourself and we'd love to hear them. So we have a pregnant pause here, which I'm tried to allow to elaborate, but is there anyone that wants to comment that has used the SimBox, even if it is very short comments? And if there is not, then I'm going to ask if someone who's planning to use the SimBox can make a comment or concern they might have about either how to do this or what concerns they have. Some of the feedback that I've heard is I'm not a pediatric content expert, so this concept of telesimulation or potentially having one of our core team members sort of just on a screen there with you is something we'd like to offer. We can't do that for all sites forever, but we thought that might be a nice way to get this off the ground.
Everyone hear me?
Yes, Carl, thank you for breaking the pregnant pause. I have trouble with pregnant pauses.
Overdue pregnancy. I appreciate this, by the way, because we really very rarely see sick little kids here in New Milford Hospital. So I greatly appreciate this simulation training and stuff. I mean, sometimes it's funny when we do simulations, the people who are involved don't take it seriously because they know it's a baby, they know it's a fake baby and everything like that. So it's just, the only thing I'm concerned about is I try to run this drill and they know that it's not a real person. It has nothing to do with the comments here, but it is always kind of interesting to try to do a simulation with people that they realize that there's no worry about the outcome. So sometimes I have a hard time getting the group motivated to do this correctly. And I don't know if there's any piece of advice for that.
Yeah, so Carl, I'll take that, and then I'd love to pass it on to some of the other team members. So this is why we thought the video, which shows this critically ill infant and hopefully captures some emotional components. And then Vivian, if you want to bring up the script, we did put some scripting in that can help to set the stage. And actually, I find it can be helpful to declare some of the things you mentioned. We know this is not realistic. We know it has its limitations, but we're here today to ensure that we're ready for the next critically ill or injured patient that we have come in that is going to need our help. And I think that the focus that we discussed is potentially even trying to frame this different than a simulation, and maybe even call it like a fire drill. If someone has a good answer to that, I'd love to hear it, but just to really take away this, I'm showing up and someone's teaching me and this is a PALS course or someone's testing me, to this is a way that we are going to make sure that tomorrow, the next day, or next year, we provide optimal care to a critically ill or injured patient. Any other tricks or tips? And Carl, part of it that we thought might help is that by having their own friend or colleague do this together with them, that it's more participatory than an external entity coming in.
I have one more question about this. When you have the simulator, the monitor with the heart rate and stuff like that, I mean, that's part of the program. So we run a scenario, and does it go through like ACLS if you shock the kid and then it turns back into a sinus rhythm or stuff like that?
Yeah, so Carl, if you were to look through the debrief script, the debrief guide, it really is the first 5 minutes. So Vivian, maybe if you want to just walk people through sort of the goals and objectives in that debrief script. I know not everyone's on the phone, but I do know we're all quite busy and that we might not have had a chance to look at this. But the short version is, it's all in here. Obviously, it will be very artificial just reading straight off of it. We did go through an iteration of this where we had some interactivity on the YouTube video, and we recognized that the first phase is really this proof of concept of testing more like a fire drill, first 5 minutes, getting pediatric equipment, getting a team together, getting some medications pulled up, getting the weight.
Sure. So on your screen share, you'll see the resource booklet for this SymBox itself. This first page shows the overview, getting started, your pre-brief, the scenario guide, the checklist, the debrief guide, and then some suggestions that our team had to really prompt a discussion about the drill that your team embarked upon. So here's the overview, getting started. These are the aims for you that you can talk to your participants about.
And then Vivian, since not everyone's on, it might be helpful just to even just give high level. The 3 parts of the drill, I'll start with that, are a very brief pre-brief, which again are listed here of, hey, thanks for coming together today. We know that people have done simulation before. Some of the stuff is on the script on the next page, recognizing that this isn't the most realistic thing. Again, potentially calling it a drill, and then whether you use the term debrief or discussion after. And the aims can be tailored to your individual ED needs, but I would say that the first aim that we wanted to sort of focus on is assembling the necessary equipment, staff, and resources to care for a critically ill neonate, recognizing shock in a neonate with abnormal vital signs and concerning clinical exam, and begin to stabilize. There's additional things about teamwork communication, gaps in training, and things of that nature. But Carl, really this first piece is, again, trying to be very narrow in scope and seeing if we can be successful, because I have had the experience in our institution, and I think others may comment the same, that this is really a culture thing, that if the culture of the department starts to say simulation works and is helpful, then you can scale up. But to start with a huge intervention is not necessarily the most effective strategy. I'm not sure, Vivian or others, what your experience has been or any of the community sites.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I totally agree. We've actually been using this in our community hospital, and I've been having our residents lead the drill, actually. My residents are not trained to deliver simulation, and as residents, their pediatric knowledge obviously isn't necessarily as solid as an attending's, and they've actually been using the SymBox pretty successfully, following the cards and actually saying out loud the basic assumption and the fiction contract, which is everyone is we know not everyone is comfortable with simulation equipment, resuscitation drills, or care with neonates. We know this can be intimidating, but really the purpose of this is to get us to work as a team, and treating it as a real simulation will help everyone get the most out of the session. So they've been using it a fair amount, actually, with different staff members. And the video, and thanks for reminding me that not everyone's on the screen share, but if you are on the screen share, here on the video, this 14-minute video that we put together, which has the vital signs, etc., there's this neonate that really paints a visual here about how sick this child looks, and that's why we really encourage using this while you do the drill. Just to keep going on with this particular material, kind of setting that stage and trying to get people's buy-in is really important, but also recognizing that it is only the first 5 minutes and that you can drill it over and over and over again. Even the simple things like where is our Broslow tape is a big goal that the project team has for community sites, is to really find your pediatric equipment, your IV equipment, your pediatric monitor, stickers, your Broslow, and just get that part going. I mean, getting people comfortable knowing where that information is. Just to move through this document, if you're on the screen share, this next part is actually the scenario guide itself, which starts with the EMS call saying you have 2 minutes to prepare a room, kind of getting your team together, assigning roles, getting all your monitoring equipment. And then as a facilitator, you move to the next part, which just, it gives you specific actions, like which part of the video should you be playing, so that while your team is getting together, you can prepare to walk them through the case. Walking them through vital signs, giving them physical exam findings when they're asking about interventions. If they're applying a bag valve mask, you can tell them that the baby is picking up. And it just really walks you through step by step what should go through this 10-minute simulation. And then there's a checklist if you want to use it, if you're at that point, just to see what things were done well, what things weren't done well. And it just is really more of an organization tool to help you go through your discussion at the end. The next part is really the discussion, sort of our recommendation on how to organize your discussion. So the really big part, because Carl, you mentioned a lot of people are scared about PEDS, is giving people the time to sort of process what they just did for the last 10 minutes, kind of going through and thinking about what went well, what didn't go well, so that they can actually put those out into words as a discussion with the group. And then just looking at things that your team can do better for the next time. And maybe that's an equipment thing, maybe that's a communication thing, just reinforcing some of those learning points and those team management points.
No,
and that's pretty much it, I think. Other comments from the team?
I believe there was a comment from Carl or someone else. Before we go to the team, any other comments from Carl or any other end users that have questions about this? And again, feedback. So if as you're going through this, that survey is a little bit or a lot of a pain in the butt. If it's a quick email to us, if it can't be the survey, this is either, not helpful, this is helpful, something additional would be helpful. We want to set this project up for maximal likelihood of success. And if we all do this and try to do it and it seems like it doesn't work, then we'll go back to the drawing board. If it seems like it works, then we'll move on to additional objectives and expanded cases.
And this is supposed to last approximately, what, 30 minutes, 20? For the whole episode?
Yeah, great question. So you can adapt to fit your needs. So if you only had 10 minutes and let's say it's the end of a night shift and everyone's exhausted, you could do this session, compressing the pre-brief and the simulation. The simulation does run for a longer period of time. If you wanted to, it again could focus very narrowly on that initial first 2 to 3 minutes of where's the Broslow tape, where are the pediatric leads, where's the equipment. If you wanted to extend it longer, it might get at things like medication dosing, fluid administration, oxygen administration. So I would say that the longest it should last is 30 minutes, but the shortest it probably could last is closer to about 10 minutes. I would say less than that on the first time with just the pre-briefing and the debrief would be challenging. Vivian, would you agree with that based on the ones you've run?
Yeah, I completely agree. We've actually had to cancel a couple of our drills because of patient care issues, and that's obviously real patient care comes first and is probably the best learning experience, particularly if it is a PEDS On the screen is sort of the timeline that we kind of put together, but I completely agree. We've been able to do this in 10, 15 minutes tops. Keeping the group small is pretty important too, as far as you can have observers, and observers will learn as well, but it's really that hands-on and finding the equipment, but absolutely adaptable.
Hi, Mark. I was just going to add for response to Carl that I know there's a lot of, there can be, it's hard to sometimes get people to buy into SIM, but I'll say that the experience from other people's, in general experience with critically ill pediatric patients is that it's so rare that it can be very chaotic versus when they have critically ill adult patients, it's not as chaotic. So I think one way to kind of promote the SIM within your ED is to kind of remind people that pediatric critical care events are very rare. And you want to have the same kind of muscle memory, the same kind of reaction time that you have to the adult critical care patients. And that's what this SIM really serves, more so than just talking out a case, but really physically getting the equipment, physically knowing where everything is, physically having that same kind of reaction time that you probably have for your adult critical care patients, that even though it may not feel as real as when you take care of a real patient, that part of what the SIM does is it will help build in more of that or really decrease your reaction time and improve your way of just knowing where everything is. And so I think that's another way you can sell the SIM box or sell doing these kinds of SIMs, is to try to remind people that because it is such a rare event, this really is the only way to kind of build in the memory and build in the ability to react the way you would with adult patients, which you're more familiar with.
I agree with you. Thank you. Because we don't have an OB/GYN department here. We don't have pediatrics here. And so the terror is the precipitous delivery. That is what we really need to practice here. And this is what I'm going to use for this simulation doll, because I think that's the most benefit we can get out of it. But you're right. It would be very challenging right now to deal with a newborn critical care patient.
Yeah, and Carl, I think you bring up again, I just want to come back to this is version 0.0. So when our team first started this, it's interesting that you bring that up because our thought was to actually do like a full newborn resuscitation. And then we recognized that that was probably too many goals and objectives and too much. And that's why we're really focusing on the first 5 minutes. But you could say for the same scenario, just change the intro and say this kid was just born or this kid was born a few days ago and brought back in. Thank you for your input, Carl. I know we do have another larger group of individuals who I did mute. So if you want to talk, you would need to unmute yourself or list a question in the chat box, please. So it doesn't look like anyone's going to break the pregnant pause. So I will do that again. My assignment for the team, as we're hopefully waiting for someone to make a comment or question, is to go back and look at the resources that you've received and look at the website and do your best to try to conduct a session within the next 2 to 4 weeks. And again, ideally providing the feedback on the facilitator feedback form, but if that's not possible, even just a quick email saying, I did a sim, it went well, I did a sim, it went terribly, or I did a sim, can we chat? As Vivian mentioned, if you are doing these sessions, we happen to have a group of about 7 or 8 emergency medicine trained physicians that would be willing to, sort of virtually join you, if that would be useful. And if we do recognize that it is a bit intimidating and challenging as a non-pediatric provider, but really this is exactly the problem we're trying to tackle with this, is how do we get this happening on an ongoing basis in your shop without needing to go to a sim center, have a pediatric emergency medicine provider there and a neonatologist there. Any other questions or comments from the team members themselves? As you're thinking about that, I'm just going to read Brian Wilson's comment, which is, I think building muscle memory is key. Thank you for the information that this can be as short as 10 minutes. We have RN competency days coming up in April, which is when I plan to use this. However, I think doing a quick shift change drill would be beneficial, so thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Brian. The other thing that I would mention is a number of individuals has asked me about using this for EMS, which I would be very enthusiastic to get feedback on that as well. I know that the Los Angeles EMS group is piloting it and considering using it as is or potentially adapting it.
I just want to make one more comment just to echo what Brian's said and some of the other comments about the muscle memory. Just in case you weren't aware, for those of you who haven't had a chance to look through the materials, the simulation scenario itself has no intubation in it at all. It really is bag valve mask, oxygen application with positive pressure. So again, it's really looking at the first 5 minutes of a neonatal resuscitation without any advanced maneuvers. So it really is very basic, very initial kind of material to learn. And really it is to build a muscle memory, to find the equipment and to do some of those proper maneuvers earlier. So I think that's another way to kind of get buy-in, is that we aren't going beyond the first couple minutes. We're not looking to do advanced material here.
Any other comments from the product team or the individuals on the other end here? As I call it a product team and we talk about selling, I did want to make sure that we're very clear. This is part of what we call the free open access medical education work that's done in emergency medicine. So this isn't a trick to get you to buy something. In case that comes up in your center or department, really, this is trying to minimize all of those cost factors that come with simulation. For those of you who are not familiar with it, a high fidelity simulator costs in the range of about $40,000 to $100,000. So our hope is that by decreasing that by about 100x, that we can increase the utilization and create a community that is using content and creating content. But just in case, in the back of your mind, you felt like you were being sold something, what you're being sold is practicing peds, not necessarily a product. So I appreciate everyone's participation. If anyone wants to stay on the line, we're at a half hour. I think our group will stay on and we'll probably have a little bit of a discussion from the product team, but we'll be on the line if you want to come on and let us know. If you could drop an email to me and let me know, either very frankly, there's no way I'm going to use this in the next month, I'm planning to use this. I would ask that if we can make that commitment via an email. Sometimes that just gets us to do it. So I'm not going to hold you to it, but if you can send an email if you're on this line, just to say, I plan to, there's no way I could do this, or our staffing is terrible, or I plan to do this at some point, that would be really useful. And our goal again was to try to get the individuals who've received the kit to do at least one session within the next 2 to 4 weeks. Are you going to Yelp? What's going on? Oh, I thought you were selling us something, Vivian. You're taking us to eat. Sorry, I think you forgot.
Sorry, I was also muted. I apologize. Yes, my show was still on and I was yelping something. So
no worries, no worries. All right, so with that, I think if Amanda, Vivian, Eileen, Joyce, Sam, the product team could stay on, and then the others, again, if there's any questions, feel free to either put them in the chat box or send them an email or text. But again, if people can try to make the commitment to do this within the next 2 to 4 weeks, and if you can, that would be extremely helpful for us to iteratively improve the product. Thank you, and thank you to Vivian for putting this together, and thank you to Maybelle and Sam and the rest of the team for all the hard work that they've done to bring this to life. It's been a little over a year in the making, so thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Hi.
So it was sort of as I think we expected from our discussion, at IMSH, Vivian, that my sense is that there's still this fear factor, and I'd just be interested to hear any other ideas related to strategy. I mean, I think we can see what happens over the next 2 to 4 weeks, but even looking at the website, frankly, and sort of resetting myself, I'm like, oh my God, this seems like a lot, even though I'm close to it and know it's not. So I'd just be interested to hear if other people have sort of gut thoughts about how we might be able to, again, just get people to start.
I mean, the only other way that I can think of to try to get people to actually participate would be to literally email individual people and say, hey, I'm available at these times. If you want some help, I'm happy to be on the line or be on Zoom or whatever to help you run it. Because, I mean, that's going to be a huge amount of effort and time. But I don't know if maybe there's a way to start with a few people and then hopefully it would grow from there. Maybe there would be word of mouth like, oh, it's not that bad. But I'm not sure how else to, because I think it is just people are just afraid. And then what Carl was saying, that some people still haven't bought into the sim thing. I mean, I think as younger trainees come out and graduate and work, it's going to be fine because at this point, I think every resident, I guess I shouldn't say